Ever feel like your four walls are closing in? Hollywood's most nerve-wracking thrillers don't need open highways or epic cityscapes. They only need a locked door and a handful of desperate characters. Forget sweeping action. These one-room masterpieces squeeze the life out of you in real time. How much suspense can you pack into a single apartment or basement? Stick around, because what goes on behind closed doors in these films is far more dangerous than anything outside. Wait Until Dark, 1967. Let's kick things off with a shot of pure adrenaline. Wait Until Dark isn't just a one-room thriller. It's a masterclass in claustrophobic terror. Picture this: Audrey Hepburn playing a recently blinded woman named Susie Hendricks, alone in her Greenwich Village apartment. Enter three criminals, led by a delightfully twisted Alan Arkin, all hunting for a heroin-stuffed doll. They think Susie will be an easy target. They're dead wrong. Director Terrence Young weaponizes every inch of Susie's cramped apartment. Each corner hides a secret. Each sound means danger. The tension ramps up with every minute, especially once Susie realizes she's not alone, and she might be the only one in the room who's thinking clearly. Forget high-speed chases. Here, a refrigerator door creaking open is scarier than any car crash. What makes this film unforgettable is Hepburn's vulnerability and her nerve. Watching her flip the script on her tormentors, literally killing the light so she can fight on equal footing, is the kind of cinematic fist-pump moment you remember for decades. No wonder Wait Until Dark is still cited by directors and actors as a gold standard in single-location suspense. If you want to know how terrifying home invasion films got their start, it's all here. One room, a single match in the dark, and the kind of showdown that'll have you checking your own locks. The Incident, 1967. Strap in, because The Incident is as brutal and relentless as thrillers come, and it barely ever leaves the hard metal benches of a New York subway car. Late at night, a dozen everyday people just trying to get home find themselves trapped when two sociopathic punks, played by Tony Musante and a young Martin Sheen, board the train. Their destination? Absolute chaos. What's brilliant here isn't just the single setting. It's how director Larry Pierce turns that cramped subway car into a pressure cooker. The camera never lets you off the hook. You're a fellow passenger, forced to watch as the bullies single out victim after victim, exposing every fear, secret, and prejudice in the car. You keep hoping someone will step up and fight back, but with each passing minute, the tension rises, and everyone's courage seems to shrink. The Incident is a psychological endurance test. There's no escape, nowhere to hide, and no polite society to protect you from the worst of human nature. When violence finally explodes, it feels personal, like you've been held hostage alongside the cast. This isn't just a film. It's a social experiment that dares you to ask, what would I do if the rules disappeared? If you think you know what you'd do in a crisis, The Incident will make you think again. The Slender Thread, 1965. Some thrillers keep you trapped in a single location. The Slender Thread pins you to a single, desperate phone line. Sidney Poitier stars as Alan, a college student volunteering at a Seattle crisis center. One night, the phone rings, and on the other end is Inga, played by Anne Bancroft, a woman intent on ending her life. She's already taken a lethal dose of pills. The race is on. Director Sidney Pollack wrings every ounce of suspense from this minimal setup. While Alan scrambles for clues about Inga's identity and location, the tension shifts between two rooms, Alan's booth at the crisis center and Inga's shadowy apartment. The audience is forced to listen, powerless, as the seconds tick away. Every pause, every ragged breath feels like it might be her last. Poitier's performance is a lesson in restraint and empathy. He's trapped too, by the limitations of the phone, by his own inexperience, by time itself. Yet the Slender Thread never feels stagey or small. Instead, it expands the walls around its characters until you feel every inch of their emotional confinement. This film asks, can a voice save a life? And just how strong is the connection between two strangers when hope hangs by, well, a slender thread? The Balcony, 1963. Step right up, the revolution's outside, but all the action's happening inside the balcony. Based on Jean Genet's notorious play, this fever dream of a film turns a brothel into the nerve center of an imaginary political coup. Sheltered from the chaos in the streets, the brothel's madam, Shelley Winters, stages elaborate fantasies for her clients, judges, generals, bishops, all of whom come here to play out roles they can't dare to assume in real life. It's part farce, part nightmare, and 100% single-location mind game. The audience never leaves the claustrophobic parlor rooms where power is manufactured, sold, and subverted. As the outside world teeters, the inside world spins into an increasingly surreal parody of government. The line between real revolution and role-play blurs until nobody, not even the madam, is sure who's actually in control. Director Joseph Strick never lets you forget you're trapped inside with these people, willing or not. The walls are both protection and prison. Every character's fantasy is built on denial, and every confrontation threatens to break the spell. The drama here isn't about gunshots or chases. It's about identity, illusion, and the human hunger for power. If you're looking for a one-room thriller with a twist, The Balcony is a wild ride through the darker corners of the human psyche. No safe words required. Lady in a Cage. 1964. Imagine being trapped in your own home, helpless, while the world outside spirals into madness. That's Lady in a Cage, in a nutshell. A relentless, often shocking thriller that preys on your most basic fears. Olivia de Havilland stars as Mrs. Hilliard, a wealthy woman recovering from surgery. She's stuck in her private elevator when a power failure hits, leaving her stranded between floors. What starts as an inconvenience quickly escalates into a nightmare. The outside world intrudes, and it's not the kind of company you'd ever want. First, a petty thief breaks in. Then, a trio of sadistic youths, including a chillingly young James Caan, invade, turning her elegant house into a war zone. The film transforms her once safe home into a trap, and the elevator cage is suddenly a cruel metaphor for vulnerability and isolation. Director Walter Grauman doesn't pull any punches. The violence is raw, the tension claustrophobic, and the critique of urban decay as biting as any social satire from the era. The entire story unravels in just a handful of rooms, but every space feels dangerous, violated, and unfamiliar. The camera stays close, pushing you to feel every jolt of terror and humiliation. Lady in a Cage is less a thriller and more a descent into urban hell, where civilization collapses one broken lock at a time. You might never look at your home or your elevator the same way again. The Outrage, 1964. Imagine getting trapped at a remote train station, forced to relive a murder trial through a kaleidoscope of shifting truths. That's the engine behind The Outrage, a Western courtroom thriller that transforms a single rundown depot into a stage for humanity's slipperiest qualities: memory, ego, and deception. Paul Newman leads a top-tier cast through a Rashomon-style retelling of a brutal crime. Each witness delivers a wildly different account, twisting your perspective until you can't trust anything you hear. The setup is classic one room. The waiting room becomes a pressure cooker as strangers hash out what really happened in the desert. The room feels both vast and suffocating as the emotional temperature rises. It's a verbal shootout rather than a gunfight, but the stakes feel just as high. Director Martin Ritt wrings every drop of tension from the minimal set, using shadow and silence as weapons. You're left doubting your own judgment by the end. Who's lying? Who's not? And what's the real story? The Outrage isn't just a locked room puzzle. It's a commentary on the stories we tell ourselves to survive. If you like your thrillers with a side of existential dread and moral ambiguity, this one-room classic hits the target and leaves you questioning everything you just saw. Pressure Point. 1962. Step into the therapist's office, where the real danger isn't outside the walls, but locked inside a man's mind. Pressure Point pairs Sidney Poitier and Bobby Darin in a psychological battle so intense, you'll feel like you're eavesdropping on a live wire. The story centers on a prison psychiatrist tasked with unraveling the tangled psyche of a violently racist inmate. Their sessions unfold in a small, airless office that quickly turns from sanctuary to battleground. Director Hubert Cornfield strips away distractions, trapping you in the tiny room as secrets, pain, and trauma spill out. Each confrontation is a duel, Poitier's calm resolve against Darren's volcanic rage. The walls seem to shrink as the conversations escalate, pulling you closer until escape feels impossible. What sets Pressure Point apart is its raw honesty. There are no easy answers here. The claustrophobic atmosphere only heightens the sense of danger and unpredictability. This isn't a physical thriller, but a psychological one. The room itself is a crucible where the ugliest aspects of human nature are forced to surface. By the end, you realize some battles are fought entirely within four walls, and the scars they leave are just as deep as any you'd find on the battlefield. Shock Corridor. 1963. Step inside the asylum, but leave your sanity at the door. Shock Corridor is a feverish descent into madness, and the locked corridors of a mental hospital are the film's one-way ticket to psychological hell. Reporter Johnny Barrett, hungry for a Pulitzer, fakes insanity to investigate a murder inside the institution. What he discovers is more terrifying than any headline. He finds himself trapped among the patients, all while his own grip on reality starts to slip. Director Samuel Fuller transforms narrow hallways and cramped wards into a labyrinth of paranoia. The setting never changes, but the tension shifts with every encounter. Each patient's trauma ricochets off the peeling walls, and the murder mystery turns into a trip through America's darkest anxieties. The longer Johnny stays, the more his world fractures. What makes Shock Corridor iconic isn't just the sense of confinement, but how it blurs the line between truth and delusion. The audience is kept guessing. What's real? What's imagined? And will Johnny make it out before he loses himself entirely? The result is a claustrophobic, nightmarish thriller that proves sometimes the scariest room is the one inside your own mind. The Pawnbroker, 1964. One small, cluttered shop. A lifetime of regret. The Pawnbroker locks you into the world of Saul Nazerman, a Holocaust survivor scraping by as a New York pawnbroker. Most of the film's gut punches land right inside his dim, security-graded shop, a place where Saul keeps the outside world and his own memories at bay. Rod Steiger's performance is pure dynamite, cold, haunted, and utterly believable. He watches desperate souls barter their last valuables, all while wrestling with his own ghosts. The cramped shop becomes a pressure cooker of pain, shame, and the barest flickers of hope. Director Sidney Lumet uses every corner and shadow to amplify Saul's isolation. Customers drift in and out, but the real story is in the tight quarters between the counters, where the past never really leaves. What makes this a true one-room thriller isn't just the physical space, but the emotional suffocation. Saul can't run from his trauma. He can only try to outlast it, transaction by transaction. It's intimate, unflinching, and as riveting as any high-octane chase. If you think a single room can't hold a whole world of hurt, The Pawnbroker is here to prove you wrong. Panic in Year Zero. 1962. Forget the atomic wasteland. You'll find the real apocalypse in a single cave. Panic in Year Zero is an early Cold War thriller that traps an ordinary American family in extraordinary circumstances. After Los Angeles is wiped out by a nuclear attack, Harry Baldwin packs his wife and kids into the car and heads for the hills. Their sanctuary, a cave that becomes both fortress and prison. The film's tension thrives on its claustrophobia. While the world outside collapses into chaos, inside that cave, trust disintegrates even faster. Supplies run low, tempers flare, and the desperate struggle to maintain order feels more threatening than any bomb blast. The setting barely changes, but the stakes are constantly rising. What's fascinating here isn't just survival. It's watching the facade of civility crumble. How far will you go to protect your family? What happens when there's no way out? Director Ray Milland squeezes suspense from every flickering lantern and echoing drip. Panic in Year Zero is a stark reminder that sometimes the tightest spaces produce the most explosive conflicts, and that survival isn't just about escaping danger, but confronting who you become when the world shrinks to a single room. The Boston Strangler, 1968. Step inside the interrogation room, where every glare and bead of sweat could be the clue that cracks a killer. The Boston Strangler isn't your standard cat-and-mouse thriller. Instead, it drills into the mind of Albert DeSalvo, the man suspected of being the notorious serial killer. The drama tightens in police precincts and psychiatric offices, where Tony Curtis delivers a chilling, career-redefining performance. Director Richard Fleischer shoots the film with a nervous, documentary edge, but the most gripping moments unfold in stark, windowless rooms. This is where detectives and doctors push, prod, and press DeSalvo, trying to get past his evasions and mental fog. The walls seem to close in with every revelation, until it's just you, DeSalvo, and the unblinking gaze of the law. The tension here is all psychological, claustrophobic, unnerving, and relentless. Every word is a weapon, every silence a trap. Curtis's DeSalvo is a cipher, and the audience, like the detectives, is left questioning what's real and what's just another mask. The Boston Strangler shows that sometimes the scariest rooms don't hold monsters, they hold the truth, waiting to be squeezed out under pressure. If you want a thriller that gets under your skin without ever letting you look away, this one's your ticket. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? 1962. Ready for sibling rivalry with a side of pure venom? Whatever Happened to Baby Jane locks two faded Hollywood sisters in a decaying mansion and lets the horror unspool, room by suffocating room. Bette Davis is Baby Jane, a washed-up child star turned twisted caretaker. Joan Crawford, the wheelchair-bound Blanche, is her tormented prisoner. Director Robert Aldrich never leaves the house for long. Most of the terror happens in a handful of rooms, with windows that might as well be prison bars. The setting is all faded glamour and mounting dread. The real suspense? Not knowing what Jane will do next, or if Blanche will ever escape her sister's sadistic care. The performances are legendary. Davis's gleeful cruelty versus Crawford's mounting desperation. But the claustrophobic setting is the true third character, trapping both women in the past. Every meal tray and cracked mirror is loaded with meaning. You feel every ounce of Blanche's helplessness, every twitch of Jane's unraveling mind. This is a thriller built on psychological warfare, isolation, and a decades-old grudge. By the final act, you'll be gasping for fresh air and marveling at how a single house can hold so much madness. The Haunting, 1963. Ready for a haunted house where you can't trust your senses or your sanity? The Haunting delivers classic supernatural terror, and it rarely strays beyond the shadowy, echoing rooms of Hill House. Director Robert Wise crafts a ghost story where the walls themselves seem to breathe, moan, and whisper your deepest fears. Julie Harris stars as Eleanor, a fragile outsider drawn into the mansion's mysteries alongside a small team of researchers. The suspense doesn't rely on jump scares or special effects. Instead, the chills creep up in tight corridors, behind locked doors, and in the suffocating stillness of the nursery. The camera lingers, daring you to spot what's lurking in the corners. The genius of The Haunting is how it uses space. Every room feels both vast and crushing, a paradox of terror. Are the ghosts real, or is the house just amplifying Eleanor's loneliness and dread? You're never sure. That ambiguity is what makes the film so unnerving. This is the haunted house thriller that doesn't need monsters in rubber masks. It just needs four walls, creaking floors, and the slow, creeping realization that escape might not be possible, not for the characters, and not for you. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? 1966. Think marital spats are just background noise? Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf turns a single living room into a battlefield of words, wounds, and psychological warfare. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton are George and Martha, a university couple who invite a young professor and his wife over for drinks. The result? 4 people, 1 night, 0 mercy. Director Mike Nichols never lets you out of that house for long. The action stays coiled inside, simmering, then erupting into volcanic arguments, drunken confessions, and the kind of truth bombs that leave craters in relationships. The claustrophobia comes not from locked doors, but from emotional traps. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and no one getting out unscathed. Taylor and Burton go nuclear, turning each conversation into a duel. The young couple are dragged into their games, and so are we. By morning, secrets are exposed, illusions shattered, and the living room looks more like a battlefield than a parlor. This isn't a thriller with knives or guns. It's a war of nerves, with each line sharper than the last. If you want a film that proves the most dangerous rooms are the ones filled with people who know each other too well, welcome to George and Martha's House of Horrors. Mirage 1965. Lost in a skyscraper, no way out, and even your own memories might be lying to you. That's the setup for Mirage, a taut thriller starring Gregory Peck as David Stillwell, a man who stumbles out of a blackout into a maze of intrigue, murder, and paranoia, all without ever leaving the building for long. Director Edward Dmytryk turns an ordinary Manhattan office tower into a labyrinth of dread. Elevators, stairwells, and deserted hallways become trap-filled corridors where Stillwell is pursued by mysterious enemies, and the terrifying gaps in his own memory. The sense of confinement is intense. The city might be outside, but the real action is inside, floor after floor. Every new door opens up more questions. Who's after him? What's real and what's a delusion? The camera keeps you close, making even the most mundane conference room feel menacing. Clues and red herrings pile up, keeping you, and Stillwell, guessing until the very end. Mirage proves you don't need handcuffs to create a prison. Sometimes, the bars are built from secrets, suspicion, and the terrifying sense that you might not even trust yourself. For a psychological puzzle with the walls closing in, this one's got your number. The Night of the Iguana, 1964. Welcome to a run-down Mexican hotel that's less vacation spot and more pressure cooker. The Night of the Iguana traps a motley crew of lost souls in a single location where desires, secrets, and tempers flare hotter than the tropical sun. Richard Burton plays a defrocked priest leading a tour group stranded by a storm and stuck in this dusty, crumbling hotel run by the fiery Maxine, a.k.a. Ava Gardner. Director John Huston keeps most of the action inside the hotel's walls, using the claustrophobic setting to mirror the characters' emotional turmoil. The hotel becomes a cage of passions and confrontations, a place where everyone's past and present collide with explosive results. The slow-burning tension isn't about physical danger. It's about the fight to hold on to dignity, sanity, and maybe even love. The characters' interactions crackle with intensity, each room a battleground for power and longing. Burton's tortured conscience wrestles with his demons, Maxine's strength masks vulnerability, and the guests' fragile facades crack under pressure. If you think a thriller needs gunfire and chase scenes, think again. The Night of the Iguana shows how emotional confinement can be just as suffocating and sometimes more dangerous than any locked door. I Saw What You Did, 1965. Sometimes, the scariest thing isn't what you see, it's what you can't escape. I Saw What You Did traps us mostly inside suburban houses, where teenage prank calls ignite a deadly game of cat and mouse. 2 girls accidentally call a murderer and unwittingly invite terror into their homes. Director William Castle masterfully squeezes the suspense into a handful of rooms, turning cozy domestic spaces into sinister traps. The killer prowls outside, but the real danger feels locked inside. Windows, locked doors, and phones become lifelines and deathlines all at once. The film leans on its tight, homebound setting to ramp up paranoia. Every creak and shadow feels like a threat. Castle's trademark flair for suspense keeps viewers on edge, even in seemingly mundane moments. I Saw What You Did is a reminder that sometimes your own home isn't safe, and that the worst monsters might be just outside your front door, waiting for you to slip up. If suburban tranquility hides terror, this one-room thriller shatters the illusion, one phone call at a time. The Honey Pot, 1967. What if a billionaire's mansion was less a home and more a trap? The Honey Pot invites you inside the lavish estate of a wealthy man who concocts a twisted game to catch his fortune hunters. The entire film practically unfolds within the opulent walls, where every room is dripping with secrets, seduction, and lies. Director Joseph L. Mankiewicz plays with classic mystery tropes while keeping the action locked tight. The characters, a parade of con artists, lovers, and schemers, circle each other like predators, each trying to outwit the rest before the final curtain. The mansion's grandeur contrasts with the venom simmering beneath the surface, making the setting feel like both a palace and a cage. The confined Space Force's alliances, betrayals, and revelations to happen in quick succession. The Honey Pot isn't just a thriller, it's a dark comedy wrapped in silk sheets. The claustrophobia here isn't physical so much as social, a gilded cage filled with snakes in designer clothes. If you want a one-room thriller with charm, wit, and enough twists to make your head spin, this is the jackpot. The Happening, 1967. Picture a swanky mansion turned hostage scene. The Happening traps an eclectic group of people inside a country estate as a kidnapping spirals into chaos. Anthony Quinn leads a stellar cast, navigating the tangled web of suspicion, greed, and survival, all within the mansion's walls. Director Elliot Silverstein uses the single location to build tension like a coiled spring. The beautiful rooms become battlegrounds, where alliances form and fracture with every passing minute. The characters' secrets unravel just as quickly as their patience. What makes The Happening stand out is its mix of suspense and social commentary. The house is a microcosm of power struggles and human weaknesses. No matter how elegant the surroundings, the characters are trapped by their own fears and agendas. The film's confined setting sharpens every interaction, turning whispered conversations into weapons and stolen glances into threats. The suspense isn't about physical danger alone. It's about the emotional toll of being trapped with people you can't trust. If you're after a thriller where the walls close in both physically and psychologically, The Happening delivers with style and bite. Whatever Happened to Aunt Alice? 1969. Behind every genteel facade can lurk something deadly. And Whatever Happened to Aunt Alice proves it, all within the elegant confines of a sprawling mansion. Shelley Winters stars as a seemingly sweet woman who uses her charm and wit to murder elderly rich ladies, and the house becomes both her hunting ground and her cage. Director Lee H. Katzin keeps the suspense tight, rarely letting the story stray far from the mansion's rooms and corridors. The atmosphere is thick with dread. Even the prettiest rooms feel like traps, with secrets hidden behind wallpaper and chandeliers. Winters' performance is a highlight, a blend of sweetness and menace that keeps you guessing her next move. The film leans into the cat-and-mouse game between killer and victim, all played out within the suffocating walls of the home. The mansion isn't just a setting, it's a character, dripping with charm and danger. The confined Space Force's confrontation and heightens every threat, turning genteel society upside down. If you want a thriller where the prettiest room might hide the darkest secrets, Whatever Happened to Aunt Alice is a killer choice. The Strangler, 1964. Step inside the dim, grim world of The Strangler, where fear lurks in a single rundown apartment. This gritty thriller zeroes in on a man whose deadly obsession turns the confined space into a nightmare. George Talbot is a meek flower shop owner by day and a chilling strangler by night. His double life a twisted dance in claustrophobic settings. Director Burt Topper embraces the cramped interiors to ratchet up tension. The apartment becomes a stage for paranoia, guilt, and mounting dread. You never know when the next knock will bring danger or when Talbot's fragile mask will slip. The film's power lies in its raw realism, No glamorized killers here, just a man trapped by his impulses and his environment. The confined spaces mirror his mental prison, making the walls feel like they're closing in every second. The Strangler proves that a single room can hold a whole world of terror, and that sometimes the most frightening monsters live just next door. House of Usher, 1960. Welcome to the Gothic nightmare of House of Usher, where a decaying mansion holds more than just cobwebs. Roger Corman's adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's classic locks you inside the eerie walls of the Usher estate, where madness and family secrets bleed through every cracked plaster and shuttered window. Vincent Price stars as Roderick Usher, a man haunted by his own demons and the weight of his family's cursed legacy. The house is practically a living entity. Dark hallways twist like veins, rooms echo with whispers, and shadows crawl like spiders. The confined setting amplifies every creak and sigh, turning the mansion into a prison of fear. You don't just watch the horror unfold. You feel it, pressing against your skin, like the suffocating dust in those old rooms. House of Usher is a masterclass in how to turn a single location into a character itself, a place where the past refuses to die and the walls hold deadly secrets. 23. The Party, 1968. Comedy and chaos collide in The Party, but don't let the laughs fool you. This one-room masterpiece is a brilliant study in escalating tension. Peter Sellers stars as Hrundi Fi Bakshi, an awkward actor who accidentally gets invited to a glamorous Hollywood party, setting off a domino effect of disasters inside a swanky mansion. Director Blake Edwards traps the action within the sprawling estate's living room and kitchen, turning the confined space into a playground for slapstick, social satire, and mounting mayhem. The film's genius is how it builds tension through embarrassment and misunderstanding, rather than guns or threats. But the stress feels just as real. Each new arrival adds fuel to the fire, and the rooms become tighter as the chaos spirals. You're watching a social cage match where every joke lands like a punch, and every mishap pushes the party closer to total meltdown. The Party proves that even in laughter, confined spaces can hold explosive energy, and sometimes the wildest thrillers are the ones that make you laugh hardest. So, there you have it, 23 intense, unforgettable thrillers that prove you don't need sprawling sets or blockbuster explosions to keep you on the edge of your seat. Just a locked door, a handful of characters, and a whole lot of suspense. Which of these one-room wonders have you seen? Or which are you adding to your must-watch list? Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and don't forget, sometimes the scariest place is the one you least expect.